don't you walk the wheel with us? What is the matter, my American friend? What has upset you? The bad machine doesn't know he's a bad machine. You still don't believe it. You still don't believe you're a bad machine. To know yourself is to know God, my friend. The factory knows, that's why they put you here. You'll see. You'll find out. In time, you'll know.
Oh, I know. I already know. I know that you are a bad machine. That's why the factory keeps you here. Do you know how I know? Huh? I know because I'm from the factory. I make the machines.
You're listening to Jim Dynamo's Bad Machine, home of the intellectual smackdown, where thought exists without error and truth knows no compromise. No quarter is asked, and no quarter is given, as the lies that bind us to the bad machine are torn asunder with unassailable fact and unquestionable reason. So put on your thinking caps and strap yourselves in, and stand by for the original man machine, Jim Dynamo.
When your bags ain't packed.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them to another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety, happiness, prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and, accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right them themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariable the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. The English crown had paid a handsome price during what they called the 7 Years' War, what we Americans call the French Indian War in 1763. This very early World War, though never termed such, this war had put Britain in a financial bind. And to get out of this bind, what it would do is it would tax its colonies. The British Parliament enacted a series of tax measures designed to increase the revenue from its colonies. The Stamp Act of 1765, the Townshend Acts of 1767, the Declaratory Act of 1766, there were protests in 13 colonies attempting to repeal the Stamp and Townshend Acts. But the British Parliament would hear nothing, and they decided that the Declaratory Act of 1766 gave them the final position and say-so over all things under the Empire. The colonists were no longer having it. On December 16th, 1763, a group of these patriots, calling themselves the Sons of Liberty, destroyed several tons of tea in Boston, Massachusetts, what we call the Boston Tea Party. This was a response to the British Parliament's Tea Act, where the Brits had full control of all tea imports into the Americas. They would tax the Americans even more so than they would tax themselves to pay for their own war debt. Now, the mercantilists and the Americans who lived here weren't going to have that anymore. And what they did was they formed the First Continental Congress. The First Continental Congress would appeal to King George III of England on several occasions, with all attempts to have him repeal his oppressive acts. Now, these oppressive acts were oppressive in that they did not so much as hurt the American citizen, the colonist, financially to any great degree, but what they did do is they limited the ability for these colonists, these enterprising American men, prevented them from expanding their businesses and acquiring the stocks and supplies they would need to run their businesses at efficient prices rather than prices that were set by the crown. The Brits would not have any of it. The king would not have any of it. So, on May 10, 1775, the Second Continental Congress would meet. By the time the Second Continental Congress had met for the first time, the Revolutionary War had already begun. The battles of Lexington and Concord had already been waged, and the American colonists were doing everything they could to drive British forces out of Boston, Massachusetts. So we were engaged. The Second Continental Congress had realized there would be no coming to terms with George III of England. So they set aside 5 of their members, the Committee of 5, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. And this Committee of 5 would, on June 10th, 1776, would begin the writing of the Declaration of Independence. From June 10th, 1776 to July 4th, 1776, the Committee of 5 put together several drafts of what would become the Declaration of Independence. Different members and different parties would argue certain points. They would want certain critical references to the English people and slavery removed from the Declaration. And once that was done, on July 4th, all of the members voted early in the morning, and it was determined. This declaration would be sent to the English Crown, and it would form the foundation of a new land and a new culture with a new ideology, where all men created equally would have the same opportunities, if their abilities allowed them so, to achieve anything that their neighbor may also achieve. That means the slave could bring himself to become president one day, if he achieved it. That meant that the farmhand could one day be the owner of the farm, if he achieved it. These were things that were not guaranteed in Europe, and still are not, as you were restricted with almost caste-like structure systems, keeping you in certain economic and social strata for generations lasting thousands of years. And this is Europe's problem. This was always Europe's problem. We are not Europe. And with this declaration, we were able to achieve something unique, which heretofore has been unmatched anywhere in the world. We are the role model. We are the torch bearer carrying this light of freedom, this Declaration of Independence, forward for all of the world to see as an example. One can only imagine what the Committee of 5 had thought the direction the nation would take after this bold new step, as they gathered in the Vincent Halsey House, a 17-room mansion located at 3701 Provost Avenue in the Bronx, right at the corner of 233rd. Most of you passed this for a good portion of your lives, knowing it as the Scharf's gas station, a green and white stuccoed wood frame house. Well, that wood frame house was at one point the executive mansion of the United States of America, and it's where John Adams would spend the last weeks of his life before expiring in Westchester County. So the Bronx has always been a part of amazing history. You might not have realized it, but it's always been there, waiting for you to notice. June 10th, 1776. June 10th, 2016. For only 240 years has this world known true independence, and a true independent people. You, the American. Your freedom born from the streets of the Bronx, from the hearts and minds of men, far greater than the current crop of leaders we see in the modern world. But there they were, 240 years ago today, changing the world for the better, forever. We hold these truths to be self-evident. This is the original man-machine, Jim Dynamo. When I need a break from defending the Earth from alien invaders, I listen to The Online Movie Show with Phil Hall, Mondays at 7 p.m., only on pprnradio.net. Download the podcast now.
Very true that there is no white man or white woman in their right mind who would want their child to marry a black boy or a black girl and bring mixed grandchildren to their families and introduce to them little mixed race children. Nobody wants this. Who in their right mind would want to spot up their race? These are people who hate their race. These are people who hate themselves. You must love your race as it is pure, because this is how the gods have made you. We are so different than them. We cannot overcome these gaps. They know the difference, and we know the difference. So why would you pretend there is no difference? These people of my generation do not want to introduce to their friends and their family these kinky-haired, black-skinned grandchildren of theirs. They would not have this. I want to be with my own. All people should want to be with their own. The gods themselves have determined this difference. We are who we are, and they are who they are. Eagles fly with the eagles, and pigeons fly with the pigeons. My enemies are these non-white peoples who are constantly trying to take from us what we create and what we gladly give them. They are my enemy. All we want to do is stay Aryan and stay white.
Norbert Hellpop was the commandant of the notorious Baron Bergen concentration camp, one of the worst places in the world during the war. And as you could hear, this man was a vile racist who believed only in the superiority of his own race, and only supported his own race, and wanted nothing to do with any other race. Now we know, in 2016, this is a vile ideology. And yet, you forgive it all the time. All the time. No, I don't forgive racists like that. I would never forgive a Nazi like that. Are you sure? Because the way I see things, millions of you, at this very moment, are still in anguish that your racist Nazi hero has died. No, I'm not talking about the fictional Norbert Hellpop. Thank you, Mike Barron, for inspiring those names. Norbert Hellpop never existed, and there is no Baron Bergen concentration camp. The vile racist comments that you heard were first uttered by the American hero, Cassius Clay, who many of you call Muhammad Ali. That's right, Muhammad Ali was a vile racist who despised white people. Don't believe me? Let's listen in, and he'll say it for himself.
You my enemies, my enemies are white people. Any white woman in this audience today, any white man in this audience today, in their right minds, don't want little black boys and little white black girls coming around your homes, schools, and churches looking to marry your sons and daughters, and in return introducing your grandchildren as little half-brown, kinky-haired Negro children. No intelligent black man in this audience, no intelligent black woman in this audience want little white boys and little white girls coming to marry their sons and daughters, and in return introducing your grandchildren as little half-white, green-eyed, blonde-haired Negroes. We're not seeking to lose our identity in blood mixing and our beautiful black African history. We don't hate you. We don't hate those of you were white. We just want to stay black.
It ain't sad because I want my child to look like me. Every intelligent person wants his child to look like him. I'm sad because I want to blot out my race and lose my beautiful identity. Who want to spot up yourself and kill your race? You a hater of your people if you don't want to stay who you are. You shame what God made you. God didn't make no mistake. Listen, no woman on this whole earth, not even a black woman in Muslim countries, can please me and cook for me and socialize and talk to me like my American black woman. No woman, and last is a white woman, can really identify with me and my feelings and the way I act and the way I talk. It's just nature. You can do what you want, but it's nature to want to be with your own. I want to be with my own. I love my people. That's all.
You my enemy. My enemies are white people.
Interestingly enough, you were repulsed when you heard the German accented Norbert Hellpop, the fictional commandant that I tweaked your delicate sensibilities with. You knew right away that this commandant, this vile Nazi figure that I created for you, was a bad guy. There was nothing in your mind. No question, not a second guess that this individual was a despicable being. Yet, for the last 7 days, the headlines and the newspapers and the social media feeds, the Twitter pages and the Facebook pages of so many people who are so saddened by the death of Cassius Clay, a.k.a. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali became Muhammad Ali because what he was trying to do was dodge the draft. And while people will argue, well, he didn't dodge the draft, it was very clear from Muhammad Ali's own words that all he did was try to dodge the draft.
Then when we filed into ministry, I have to admit that it did look phony to the public. Well, at first he tried to get by because of his conscious objective. Second, he had to support his mother. Now he's a minister.
Not once, not twice, but 3 times, with 3 strategies that failed each time. Now, of course, you'll have people say, oh, well, it's on record that he was incompetent and he failed his ABZABs. I don't know if they called them ABZABs back then, the Armed Forces Basic Aptitude Test, but whatever it was, I say he fudged it.
I'm not just a boxer. I do a lot of reading, a lot of studying. I ask questions. I go out, travel these countries and watch how their people live, and I learn.
Why would I say he fudged it? Well, here's a man who we listened to most of our childhood and our adult lives, going one-on-one with wits like Howard Cosell, and wits like Don Rickles, and spokespersons like Sylvester Stallone. And this man appeared pretty much everywhere, reading from notes, citing from his favorite leader, the ethno-Marxist religious fraud known as Elijah Muhammad, the then leader of the Nation of Islam. You know, another group of racist, bigot separatists, just like the white Nazis of Europe, that you know how to despise and loathe so easily. Well, these are another group of loathsome Nazis, separatists, that you are afraid to hate. And you're afraid to hate them because they're not white. Because they're not white, and you are, you automatically think that thinking anything wrong about someone who is not white is racist. And it's racist because you've been listening to whines just like the things that you've heard Muhammad Ali blather 40 and 50 years ago. You've been hearing them for 40 and 50 years. And because you've heard them for 40 and 50 years, you no longer realize what is true and what is not. People who are older than 50 remember, sports figures did not behave as outrageous as Muhammad Ali did. And for the modern audience, let's put things in context. You know the idiot Kanye West? Well, Muhammad Ali was that idiot 45 years ago. Okay? He did not know how to comport himself in any manner that was considered acceptable to the public. And it's not a black thing, and it wasn't a white thing, because even blacks back then thought that his behavior was outrageous. Of course, this was the blacks of the 60s and the 70s before the Cultural Revolution that had taken over America, when the Democrat nonsense, the ideology of failure, had taken over our schools and taken over our cities. Well, back before then, when families lived together, both black and white, fathers lived with their families, well, you see, people looked at Muhammad Ali's outrageous blather, and they were offended by it. And I was one of those people. No, I was very young, just like many of you were at the same time. Some of you will remember exactly what I'm talking about. This man was obnoxious. This man was beyond boundaries. He was the Kanye West of his time, a rude and obnoxious buffoon. This rude, obnoxious buffoon decided he wasn't going to serve America. He was going to serve the nation because he was special, you see. And instead of just accepting the fact that he was no different than the thousands of other black and white and Puerto Rican and Indian and all ethnicities of Americans who received conscription notices from 1965 until the official draft lotteries in 1969, he was special. We see so many special people today, but Muhammad Ali was one of these first special people. And over the years of media hammering you and hammering you and hammering you with outrageous and unacceptable behavior from persons like Muhammad Ali and like Kanye West, and I could think of half a dozen other, but it'll sort of point the finger in a single direction. What has occurred over this time, you have been convinced by being beaten over the head with boorish behavior that this boorish behavior is acceptable. It is not. Muhammad Ali's behavior was not acceptable then, and were he a healthier man, I'm sure his mouth would have been running and his behavior would have been as equally unacceptable now in 2016. Let's go back to Commandant Norbert Helpop and his vile racist commentary. Your Muslim American hero, Muhammad Ali's vile racist commentary. Now, I already know that the initial commentary, the fictional commentary that you thought was uttered by someone else, really, really annoyed you. Really triggered you. Made you remember all those things that were hammered into you in the 70s, but all the evil people. So then how come you're so confused and you don't know what to do when we pointed the same finger at Muhammad Ali? How do you explain it? I can explain it. I know exactly what happened to you. Mind control. I know it's big two words that scares you away because it's kooky, mind control. But that's exactly what it is. You've been brainwashed into believing boorish behavior, Muhammad Ali's behavior, Muhammad Ali's hatred for America, Muhammad Ali's hatred for white people was acceptable. You were convinced that it was acceptable because you were beaten over the head with Muhammad Ali's lies, then you would be beaten over the head with Alex Haley's lies and the Roots fraud, which anyone with a brain knows was complete fabrication. And then you were beaten over the head with the Revenge of the Nerds fraud, every other social justice Hollywood production ever since. Every other media outline is a social justice outrage. Every other television show is a social justice outrage. Muhammad Ali will tell you America never accepted blacks. It's strange because they accepted him when he was Cassius Clay. And they accepted Sonny Liston, the man who was the champion that he had to beat, who was also black. And they accepted Sugar Ray Robinson. And they accepted Willie Mays. And we keep going back and all the other blacks that seem to have been accepted by the oh so racist America. Yet you've never been able to turn on a movie or a television show or a radio channel and not seen a black face or heard what has been portrayed as a black voice or a black character. Never. 1/12 of the population of this country is represented as if it is 50% of the population. You don't hear Chinese or Asian voices all the time. When you do, it's usually in a diminishing capacity. A Ching Chong Charlie. You know, like Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie O'Donnell was allowed to Ching Chong Charlie. Do you think that Donald Trump would be allowed to Ching Chong Charlie? He would not. You would accept it when Rosie did it. Of course I didn't. The same way you accept it when Muhammad Ali tells you that he's not going to mix his blood or mix his race with other races. You would find this vile if I said this. I would never mix my race with other races. It's too late, but you'd be offended by it if I did. You'd be offended when you do hear white people who do say these same things. When the media presents to you vile, evil, white racists from Europe, or the neo-Nazi canard that we are often presented with in the media. You know, the same 6 guys that you see on the Jerry Springer show, they're the KKK. It's pretty interesting because 70 years ago this was an organization of 2 million people, mostly Democrats. And now it might be an organization of 2,000 idiots from coast to coast in a nation of 400 million. 2,000 in a nation of 400 million, this is not a threat. You do have the Nation of Islam, though. And just like Muhammad Ali presented their militant nature and lies, they still have that militant nature and lie. They come right out and they call for the death of thousands of whites. And what do? Nothing. What does the media do? Nothing. What does the police and the state prosecutors do? Nothing. They allow it. You think they would allow it? Of a white leader of an exclusively white organization that preached such hatred had said the same thing? No, it would be all over the news. It would be all over the news because those news people, just like you, have been convinced that white racism is unacceptable, but black racism is. Let me educate you. Neither of their racism is acceptable. Muhammad Ali was a vile bigot and racist who despised Caucasians, despised America, but loved the money and the adoration that he received from everyone. He was a fraud. He was a phony. He was a punk ass. That's right, a punk ass. And unlike many of you out there, I've actually been in the ring. I've actually stepped into dojo rings. I've actually stepped in the Golden Glove rings. So I will say, as a combatant, as a pugilist, that the man didn't terribly impress me, and I think he fought bums for the most part. Okay? George Foreman and Frazier. Aside from them, everyone else was a bum, including Sonny Liston. All right? So you have a man who was in a corrupt organization led by a corrupt individual, Don King, no finger brackets. He was given set-up fights, staged fights, where we knew exactly what was going to happen. The bum was going to lose, and the greatest was going to win, and he was going to run his mouth. And he ran his mouth for years, and he ran his mouth through my childhood, and I was sick of it then, and I'm sick of it now. And what I'm sick of even more now is the pathetic idol worship of this damned Nazi son of a bitch. And most of you don't have the goddamn brains to realize it. You wouldn't be worshiping and you wouldn't be crying if it were Norbert Hellpop, the fictional Nazi commandant of a damn concentration camp. But because it's Muhammad Ali, you forgive his racism, you forgive his bigotry, the same way you do Barack Obama and Kanye West and Sam Jackson, any dozen of the non-white celebrity set who expresses nothing but the same type of anti-white, anti-American hatred that Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay did 46 years ago. Well, let me tell you, if it's not obvious, it pisses me off. It pisses me off that this has been accepted, and it pisses me off that you're so damned weak as to not realize what has been presented in front of you all of your life. You have been told to accept hatred, and you do. At the same time, you know what hatred is, and you turn your back on it. It's sickening, people. You know exactly what is right or wrong. You know exactly what racism is. You know exactly what bigotry is. But when it's presented to you from a white man's perspective, it's bad, and you know how to behave. When it's presented to you from a non-white's perspective, you don't know how to behave. And that is because you have been brainwashed by cultural Marxists who throw out the word racist. You're a racist if you're critical. Well, I'm being more than critical. I'm pointing fingers. Okay? Muhammad Ali's actions and words speak for themselves. And in comparison, when those very same words are uttered by a man with a black armband and jackboots, you know what they mean. But when Muhammad Ali said it, you're ready to forgive it. Well, I'm not ready to forgive him or you for the pathetic weakness. So it's time for you to pick up your big boy pants and your big girl pants, and it's time to grow up, Generation X. When you see hatred, you call it for what it is. You don't forgive it because this person is your hero. You learn that if your hero is a scumbag and he stays your hero, you're the scumbag. Plain and simple. When you worship a pedophile, a warlord killer, like Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay decided to, right? This young Christian boy, raised a Christian, raised to believe in a Savior who sacrificed himself as to save a world. Instead, he turns his back on everything to idolize a vile, pedophile, rapist warlord. And anyone who worships this vile, pedophile, rapist warlord has already lost any type of moral credibility or moral ground as far as I'm concerned. The church of Jeffrey Dahmer is the church of Jeffrey Dahmer. So just because you call Jeffrey Dahmer Muhammad, Jeffrey Dahmer lived 1400 years ago, you don't get to make him the leader of a religion. Okay? If you think John Wayne Gacy is an individual that is worthwhile of idolizing and listening to his words and memorizing his thoughts, you are a pathetic individual. This is the same if you think that Muhammad, the prophet, the warlord, is a worthy individual. You are pathetic. Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, believed in this pathetic individual, and that made him pathetic in my book. He was a pathetic racist. He hated this country. He declared whites his enemy. I'm sorry, people, but when you declare yourself my enemy, until I crush you, until I destroy you as my enemy, you stay my enemy. I don't care if you have a changing of heart over the years after you declared yourself my enemy. I did not. I accept your words. I accept your hatred. And I return it in kind. My enemy stays my enemy until he is vanquished, until he is no more. My self-declared enemy, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, he moulders in the ground with the rest of the vile bigot Nazis of the 20th century. So if this is your hero, I urge you to reassess that which you value. Because that which you value and that which I value are two very different things. Get your act together, people. Understand hatred and racism when you see it, and stop being cowards and call it out. If you, Generation X, do not act now, your children and grandchildren will be raised with nooses around their necks. And these nooses will restrict everything they say, everything they think, everything they do, because you were too weak to call a racist bigot like Muhammad Ali a racist bigot. Understand your role in human history, Generation X. Mommy and Daddy, they're not fighting anymore. Okay? You can watch all the TV that you want to. You can go out and play with your friends whenever you want to. You're the adult now. Start behaving like adults, not children who have been lectured to and afraid to stand up for truth and reality in front of a classroom, in front of your elementary school teachers who had equally pathetically weak ideologies. And that's why they allowed these hatreds to spread 40 years ago. End it now. Wake up. Muhammad Ali was no man's role model. Muhammad Ali was no hero. And that's what I have to say about that.
Sorry I had a fight in the middle of your Black Panther party.
Are you ready to get blitzed? Prepare yourself for life's uphill battle. Master Trainer Jim D's Fitness Blitz training techniques will make you stronger, more determined, and ready for any challenge. Burn fat, build muscle, improve your cardiovascular health with resistance training, mental conditioning, martial arts, yoga, and sports-specific performance enhancement. Train in your home, on Fitness Blitz certified equipment, or in your local gym. Take the Fitness Blitz Challenge. Begin every day by pushing your limits and taking control of your life. Grab life by the horns and reach for your ideal potential. Dive into a new concept in total health and competitive activity. Challenge yourself to be better and dare not to fail with Fitness Blitz. Learn more at www.fitnessblitztv or by calling 917-804-6589. Begin your quest to be your best with Fitness Blitz today. Three Guys Talking Sports. Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Sounds crazy to me. You're listening to Bad Machine on the PPRN Radio Network. Generations ago, men built machines to serve man. Who then serves those machines? Now it is man who jumps to respond to every buzzer and bell issued by the same machine that tells you day is night, cats are dogs, and fish need bicycles. Break away from the lies that bind us to the Bad Machine. Download a dose of radical reality with Jim Dynamo's Bad Machine. every Friday at 4 on the PPRN Radio Network. Don't let the machine's elevator bring you down.
In every revolution, there's one man with a vision.
Jim Dynamo. In January of 1915, the Plan de San Diego was discovered. The Plan de San Diego was a document calling for the armed insurrection in San Diego, Texas, by all non-white men, Mexicans, Indians, Chinese, any foreigner who was not of European extraction was to take up arms and kill every white man, woman, and child that he could see in order to retake this formerly Mexican territory, a new Reconquista. The original Reconquista, you may recall, refers to the liberation of Muslim-held Spain several hundred years ago. The modern Reconquista is about Mexicans taking back the American Southwest. On January 15th, 1915, the police would arrest Basilio Ramos. Basilio Ramos was one of the individuals that helped distribute the Plan de San Diego pamphlets, and he helped authorities trace the plot back to one Venustiano Carranza of Mexico. Armed raids did not occur on February 20th as planned, but raids would occur from south of the border into American territories, into American states. These armed raids were led by Mexican radicals Anaciento Pizana and Francisco Villa. You call Francisco Villa Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa was not a Mexican bandito, he was a communist, and these racist communists in Mexico were using ethno-Marxist strategies 100 years ago to conquer and divide the people with the intent of taking back territories that Mexico had lost many years before. Mexico had lost this territory in the Texas annexation of 1845 and then the Mexican secession of 1848. Pancho Villa and his communist army would attack Columbus, New Mexico in March of 1916, and that was it. The United States had had enough, and they dispatched one General Blackjack Pershing to lead the punitive expedition into Mexico to capture Pancho Villa, bring him back to the United States to justice. This led to even more conflict. Many skirmishes, bickering back and forth between the Americans and the Mexican government. The Mexicans did not want the Americans there. The Americans were not going to pull back unless they had certain assurances that these attacks would cease. Well, it led to a head, and the Mexicans decided that they were going to threaten America by combining their Mexican regular forces, the Mexican army, and these San Diego Raiders. Does that name sound familiar? San Diego Raider? Yeah, that's what it means. It doesn't refer to pirates. Racist Mexicans who came into the United States to kill white people. Surprised that that doesn't raise as much ire as something like the Redskins. Maybe it should. So the combined effort of these San Diego Raiders and the Mexican military forces would not occur, and Mexico and America had agreed to de-escalate the tensions. But that didn't stop the plan for the Reconquista. Plans for the Reconquista and communist plots would continue through the 1920s and 1930s, would resurface yet another serpent's head in February of 1968. February of 1968, one Jose Vasconcelos created the concept of La Raza Cosmica, the super race. Again, a very familiar concept, a superior people amongst people. And according to Jose Vasconcelos, because of where the Latin people had evolved, the geography of the terrain, the climate of the regions had turned these people into supermen, and as such, they would not share their land with anyone other than these other Latino supermen. In Europe, that was called Lebensraum. You would only have space for your own. Back then, they were Aryan racists. The theories of Jose Vasconcelos, La Raza Cosmica, would be perpetuated by Guillermo Lux, Murilo Vigil, and Charles Trujillo, professors at the New Mexico Highland University. They have a compatriot in Jose Gutierrez, working at the University of Texas at Arlington, who also perpetuates these super race theories. The very racist La Raza Cosmica ideology has a political wing in the United States. That political wing is called the National Council of La Raza, the National Council of the Race. This race excludes Caucasians and Negroes and only is exclusive to Latinos born south of the American border. Originally called the Southwest Council of La Raza, in February of 1968, they changed their name to the National Council of La Raza. And under the guise of a civil rights organization that works to benefit Latinos and Chicanos of all backgrounds, what La Raza really is a racist Nazi organization, no different than the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, arm-banded, jackbooted Nazis from the 1930s and 40s that you recognize so well. The reason you don't recognize these particular individuals is because they have been insinuated through the entire political body, through that infiltration of the healthy body politic. What you have is this infection. This infection is represented now by individuals named Gonzalo Curiel, Edward Garcia, and Sam Liccardo. Gonzalo Curiel is a judge. He is a La Raza member, a La Raza associate, but he is a judge who supposedly dishes out unbiased jurisprudence to Americans of all races. Eddie Garcia, Puerto Rican, is also a member of La Raza. Sam Liccardo is a mixed Irish-Mexican-American, and we will presume that he too cleaves more to his Mexican side. These so-called leaders of San Jose, California, have been named specifically because on June 2nd at the San Jose Convention Center, what they allowed were race-based riots where Latinos and non-whites attacked almost exclusively Caucasian Americans, white Americans, who were attending a Donald J. Trump political rally. We've seen this type of thing before in Nazi Germany. We've seen this thing in Hungary in the 1950s. We've seen this thing in Cambodia and Vietnam in the 1960s. We have seen this in the Middle East in the 1970s. What are you seeing in your country now? What you're seeing is the jackboot of racist fascism. You are seeing ethno-Marxism being applied and pushed upon you. That's right. They're not wearing jackboots. They're not wearing armbands. They're not wearing identifiable uniforms. And unlike the Nazis of the past, the media would identify them. We knew who they were. The modern media hides who they are. Conservative media hides who they are. Liberal media hides who they are. The reason that they hide who they are, again, is a matter of racial cowardice. They are afraid to point a finger at ethnic racists because they don't know how to handle this racism. All you have to do is look at the La Raza Charter and change what their terms are, who they protect to a single race, say Swedes, say Norwegians, say Germans, and you will see automatically that everyone in La Raza, the race, is a racist. If this were the Aryan Raza, you would understand that. You radio hosts, and you television hosts, and you newspaper journalists, you would understand that very clearly. You don't understand it, but I'm making it clear to you now. La Raza is a racist organization. And what we saw on June 2nd, it's identical to what we saw in Berlin in the 1930s and the 1940s. And to sit here and tolerate it, to allow a media to make excuses for this hatred, is inexcusable. You have responsibility. That responsibility means you don't just turn off the TV channel. You don't just ignore. You contact these people and you expose to them. You make them realize their lies. You rub their nose in their mess the same way you would a dog who made a mess on your brand new white carpet. You are allowing racist fascists to take over this nation. Your silence means consent. Sam Liccardo, I have no confidence in your ability to lead a city in an unbiased manner. Judge, finger brackets, Gonzalo Curiel, we know you're a racist. Don't hide it. Don't be a coward who you are. I have no confidence in your ability to provide unbiased jurisprudence to anyone who is a non-Latino. Police Chief Eddie Garcia, you, sir, are a disgrace to the uniform you wear and the badge that you have the audacity to present to America as an unbiased shield. You, sir, are a disgrace. You are a coward. You are a liar. You are a quisling. You are no different than a Nazi jackboot thug breaking windows on Jewish shops, allowing it to happen while your officers stand there and white Americans are assaulted. Oh, it's very convenient that it just happens to fall into your political ideology of Reconquista. But we know how it works. Drop the radical pose, put on a suit and ties, pretend you're part of the scene, and subvert it. Hail Hydra. Hail La Raza. Sieg Heil La Raza. Sieg Heil. Sieg Heil. Myths of the Machine is brought to you by our sponsor, Mighty Man Limited. Be a master of the universe when you wear Mighty Man Limited athletic and sportswear, custom-designed athletic compression gear for male and female athletes, compression shirts, sports bras, yoga pants, hoodies, and more. Available only at mightyman.logosoftware.com. Be mighty. Since the time when men gathered around campfires and told tales of the warriors who challenged the monsters that gather in the dark, the mighty men who fought alongside the gods, some rising to victory, others falling into the abyss. These are the heroes who became the myths of the machine. And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? August 1989, in a squalid Bronx apartment on Eagle Avenue, behind heavy-drawn curtains, a very large, dark-skinned man sat, watching television, waiting for a phone call. Yeah. You know who this is? Yeah. The time is now. You killed this black tiger. Yeah, boss. And the receiver hung up. Just one shot. That's all he thought. Just one shot, and it would change everything. The large, dark-skinned man walked up the tenement building stairs in one of the nicer neighborhoods in Queens. He opened the roof access door, walked out onside into the nighttime sky, and found a position on top of the elevator tower. He unzipped his workman's tool bag to produce the broken down pieces of a .50 caliber sniper rifle, and he began to assemble it. Just one shot. He could leave this city once and for all. He could go anywhere. He could go back home to the islands. He could live in South America. He could travel the world on a yacht. Just one shot, and he would be taken care of. The tall man would reward him nicely for the assassination of the Black Tiger. The Black Tiger was a costume vigilante who had been running havoc over the local gangs in the Bronx and Queens and Manhattan for the last year and a half. No one knew who he was. No one knew where he came from. The heavy, dark-skinned man, he had a feeling. Something drew him to this spot. His reputation had been established for many years because something would always draw him to the right spot. And at that right spot, he would usually find the target of his recent assignment. And every time, the target was dispatched. This time, this target, everyone would know. The famous Black Tiger, New York's costumed crime fighter. His name would be famous forever. The Duke. The one and only. The man who shot the Black Tiger. It was a great honor for the tall man to request this task of him, and he wasn't going to mess it up. So he waited patiently on the rooftop, where that special sense told him this was the spot. Thin, pale fingers placed the phone receiver back into its cradle. The man sat back, grinning to himself. It's going to be done now, boy. You see? Yeah, boss, I see. That's right. We take this Black Tiger out once and for all. We run New York City. That's true, boss. What about Italians? No. We no worry about the Italians. This Black Tiger, he vexes them too. We take him out. These Italians, they owe me favor. And trust me, I collect in spades. You take these boys. You go out now. Your do job has to be done. You got it, boss. The man named Earl nodded to two men sitting there and walked out the door. As they walked out, the thinner of the two spoke.
That's what I'm saying, man. You mean Ragamuffin gonna fuck Black Tiger up, man. That's it for the Black Tiger now, man. Ragamuffin gonna run this shit.
The man in the leather chair sat up. Hey! Bring this boy here back.
Yeah, boss. This one?
Yeah, man, that's him. Your boy, come to me. You talk to me again. What you say?
Nothing, boss. I just say that you gonna fuck up. You gonna fuck that Black Tiger up, man. You gonna bust a cap in that motherfucker's ass, man, right? You get the Duke on his ass, right?
No. But what you call me out my name, Ragamuffin?
I didn't mean nothing by it, boss. I just don't mean nothing by it. It just slipped.
It just slipped. You just slipped. Call me Ragamuffin in front of me, man. Who you think you be, boy? Get your ass over here.
No, boss, no.
You take this boy out of here. You teach him lesson. One more time.
You got it, boss. Let's go, you.
You know, bring him back into my office. Me no want to see him again. It had been a long night, and the Black Tiger had done his 4 hours of rounds, and it was time to go home. He had a fiancée waiting there, in the apartment they shared, in Briarwood, Queens. He made his way across the adjoining rooftops, from building to building, able to jump from one to the next, where there was a gap that separated one building from the other. This would prevent many people from tracking him normally, if they were able to spot him at all, that is. His black costume made him almost invisible against the nighttime sky. The Tiger had a routine. He would alternate his routes home, this way, if anyone was able to follow him. The altered path every time could possibly lead them astray and give him the advantage he would need, maintaining the concealment of his home base. But he had picked up some tricks. Just a month ago, he had picked up from the Army-Navy surplus store an old pair of Soviet night vision goggles. In the last blocks, before he would return to his home, he would scope everything out with the patience of a cat, making sure that the coast was clear before he made the final approach to his own home lair. Blocks away from that home, Black Tiger stood on a rooftop and activated the night vision goggle. Everything seemed clear to the left, but to the right, he could see someone on a roof, laying prone. Cold black area. That didn't look good. That didn't look good at all. And he was pointing directly at the apartment his fiancée, Sarah, lived. The Black Tiger would investigate. The Black Tiger approached the man laying prone, his eye to the scope, quietly, gently, stalking just like a big cat would. The Black Tiger took a position behind the man without him noticing.
Yo, something I could help you with?
With that, the large man rolled to his right. The rifle that had laid in the tripod in front of him immediately swung around, peeling off a shot. In the last second, the Black Tiger was able to grab the barrel with his left hand. It whizzed past his head. That was close. Closer than he was used to. He attempted to pull the weapon from the man's hands. Unfortunately, it pulled the man from his prone position into a standing position, the two of them momentarily looking at each other, their eyes meeting with all four hands on the sniper weapon. But the Black Tiger knew the weapon was empty. He released it and kicked, putting a booted foot into the large black man's chest, sending him backward into the roof parapet. The man held the rifle now like a club and swung it overhead. The Black Tiger, backpedaling, was able to avoid the swings. The man had swung the rifle to where the butt had hit the rooftop. The Black Tiger hit him with a long blade. The large black man dropped the rifle, rolled backward onto the roof. The Black Tiger followed in and pummeled him with a series of blows. The man was staggered. The man reached behind him, this time pulling two blades in either hand from behind his back, and swung, slashing savagely at the Black Tiger. The Black Tiger reached to his own belt and pulled from their casing a pair of extendable metal nunchucks and swung them back.
Come on, here, you want to play? Come on!
The flailing metal disarmed the man of his knives. First one, then the other, and he stood there, first holding a wrist, then swinging his right hand to his hip. He pulled from a holster a .45 caliber handgun and let off a series of shots. The Black Tiger hurtled at the man with the discharging firearm, swinging his metal nunchucks until one of the bullets caught the flail, sending the pair of nunchucks flying to the rooftop and sending the Black Tiger running for cover. Pinned down behind the roof's stair access tower, the Black Tiger looked around for an exit. He He was on the wrong side of the building. All there were, in 3 directions, was an 80-foot drop, and no fire escape, and no building to jump to. His only option was to go back in the direction where the man was firing the gun trying to kill him, disarmed of his nunchucks. The Black Tiger was without tools, without his gear. The Black Tiger did not have the means to create a distraction, to close the distance between him and the gunman. Shots continued to fire out, getting closer and closer. The gunman, more brazen, seeing that the Black Tiger hadn't responded, made his way closer and closer to the tiger's hiding spot. The Black Tiger realized he had one option, the night vision goggles. He pulled them from the small pouch on his hip. He stood, quickly, while gunfire sliced the air around him, and hurled the Soviet-made night vision goggles in the direction of the man with the gun. The goggles hit the man square in the face, breaking his nose, blood instantly running from it. The man's left hand reached up and grabbed his nose as he hunched forward in pain. That was all that the Black Tiger needed. 2 moves. He was on top of the man, and he began to pummel him. First he disarmed him, grabbing the gunman's wrist with 2 hands. He wrenched in one direction, twisting it unnaturally, until he heard his shoulder snap, and the gun fell and skidded across the roof. The large man groaned in pain, consciousness slowly fading from his eyes. The Black Tiger, exhausted, stood over the man. He made his way across the roof. The Black Tiger pulled from his belt utility pouch a small flashlight that he shone across the rooftop, looking for his nunchucks. When he found them, he turned off the light quickly, picked them up and noticed that they were ruined after being hit by the .45 caliber bullets. They were useless. Momentarily distracted by the damaged nunchucks, the Black Tiger didn't realize that the large man had regained consciousness and was making his way towards him, the lumbering figure closing in on the masked man. When suddenly, from somewhere in the distance, a shot rang out, and the large black assassin's head blew apart like an overripened tomato that had fallen to the floor, brains and bone fragments raining to the roof behind the large man. The Black Tiger, still kneeling, leaped and rolled, attempting to find cover behind the roof parapet. Another sniper! What in the hell was going on? The tiger didn't stay in this position for long. He scurried low, underneath the roof parapet, to the far side roof fire escape exit, and made his way down the ladder. The Black Tiger had no idea what was going on. Not one sniper, but 2. And why would the one sniper kill the second sniper? It didn't make sense to him. He made his way to the street level, before running across the street and finding cover in the shadows. There would be no way he could go back on the roofs without the night vision, and he had to get back home. And he couldn't do it dressed like a midnight vigilante. The tiger removed his custom tooled leather mask, revealing the face of Wendell Drake. Del Drake to his friends. Taking his mask, he stuffed it in the side pocket of the black striped utility trousers that he wore. Del cautiously doubled back, circled around several blocks, always looking up to make sure that there were no additional snipers, until he finally made his way to the apartment in Briarwood, Queens. Del walked into the lobby, summoned the elevator, entered the elevator, pressed the button, and the lift took him to the floor he desired. On a rooftop 1 mile away, 5 men in black ninja outfits stood silently, while the white-haired giant peered through a pair of binoculars, watching Wendell Drake walk into the lobby of the Queen's building. The giant handed the binoculars to one of his aides, while his eyes narrowed, his overgrown Asian features twisting into a scowl. The Black Tiger is mine to kill. You've been listening to Jim Dynamo's Bad Machine on the PPRN Radio Network. Be part of the Bad Machine Radio Revolution by following our Twitter page at Bad Machine Radio and by visiting pprnradio.net. Bad Machine is a one-man media production, the exclusive owner of all original content. Otherwise, no rights are reserved. 2016.